Good morning and welcome to our council meeting for Kneehill County, today May 11th. We have three of our councillors zooming in through our meeting platform, and we will do the best we can. Based on that, I will probably always ask for a post in case I miss something, so please don't be offended if I do. Also, we'll move into the agenda. We have a couple corrections. There's a typo under 5.4.1. We need the bylaw to read 1840, not 1838. And there will be an addition to the agenda under 12.1. We need a closed session with section 17 and 21 being listed. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Wade?
I'll move the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Christie. All those in favor of adopting the agenda? Opposed? None. Carried. Thank you. We also had recirculated our council meeting minutes of April 27th, 2021. Were there any comments or concerns with the minutes? Councillor King.
I'd make the motion then to approve the minutes from April 27th as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Great. Carried. Okay, we're down to 5.1.1, road closure at Horseshoe Canyon, bylaw 1823. Lori, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. So I bring back to you today our road closure at Horseshoe Canyon. I'll just go over the background before we go over the recommended motions. So currently, Kneehill County holds a 3.56 acre title to an area directly south of Horseshoe Canyon that has been fragmented by Road Plan 834LK. This parcel contains portions of the parking lot and a small portion of the canyon itself. The existing outhouses are on the boundary of the road allowance. The portion of the undeveloped township road runs through the parking lot, the turnaround, a portion of the canyon, and some of the enhanced trail down to the base. Administration has proposed that this portion of Township Road 284 be closed and consolidated into a descriptive plan that will become into the descriptive plan 0910342 Block 1 Lot 2 that was created following the realignment of the highway. We are also proposing to close Road Plan 834 LK, which completely fragments the current title. This will also be consolidated into the descriptive plan. On July 21st, 2020, Council gave first reading to bylaw 1823 and the public hearing was held August 18th, 2020. After the public hearing, the bylaw and road closure package were forwarded to Alberta Transportation for the sign-off. Administration recently received the package back from Alberta Transportation, and now we are ready to finalize the road closure process. So discussion options: in 2007, Highway 9 was realigned and Alberta Transportation gifted us this parcel. Outhouses were added in 2008 and the parking lot was paved in 2010. Since we do not own the roads, we do not actually own some of the infrastructure that has been developed over time on the site. Closing these roads and consolidating them into the existing plan would enable the land to be utilized more efficiently, and the outhouses could be moved or new ones constructed more feasibly. Currently, they are not in compliance with the setback requirements stated in the land use bylaw. Consolidating these additional lands would bring the parcel size to approximately 7.5 acres. A real property report will not be required for this property. The required public hearing was held August 18th, 2020 at 10 o'clock. Following the public hearing, the documents were forwarded to the Minister of Transportation for signature, and that has been received back. So financial implications, the plan of survey that will be required is costing about $28.60. A portion of the surveying has already been paid for from the 2020 planning operating budget, and the remainder will come out of the 2021 operating budget. So our options and recommendations are is that council move forward with second reading of bylaw 1823 to pursue the road closure and consolidation of a portion of Township Road 28-4, which is an undeveloped road allowance adjacent to the south end of Horseshoe Canyon, more specifically the southwest of 27, 28, 21 west of the 4th, and Road Plan 834 LK into the descriptive plan 0910342, Block 1, Lot 2, and then for council to also consider third reading today.
Thank you. Any questions for our presenter? Councillor Penner.
Just a question, just for my own knowledge here. What is a real property report?
So a real property report is, it will outline the lines of the subdivision or the property lines, and it'll also identify any infrastructure improvements. So typically in a sale or that type of thing, that is what is required. Or it could be in a consolidation such as this.
Councillor Christie.
It won't reveal any financial stuff, like on a real property report on a house or something, would it show up any liens?
No, no.
Councillor Penner.
Just another question. Lori, any feedback from the public hearing or nobody?
No, through the Reeve there was, or through the Deputy Reeve, sorry, there was no comments or documentation received from the public.
What would council like to do? Councillor King.
So I'd make the motion that we move second reading of bylaw 1823 as outlined in our package.
Well said. Great, we have a motion to move second reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that was carried unanimously. Councillor Christie.
I'll move third reading of bylaw 1823.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimous. Okay. Sorry, I had to get organized. Thanks for being patient. We're on to 5.1.2, cancellation of the May Municipal Planning Commission meeting. Would that be you? Lynn?
Sure, I'll do this one as
Okay.
well.
Thank you.
Background bylaw 1784, Municipal Planning Commission bylaw states under conduct of business that the commission shall hold such meetings as necessary to fulfill the commission's responsibilities. The Municipal Planning Commission currently holds their meetings on the fourth Thursday of every month. Council sets the dates and times the Municipal Planning Commission will meet during the annual organizational meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for May 27th, 2021. Since these meeting dates are set by a motion of council at their organizational meeting in October, council authority is required to cancel one. Administration has not received any applications for discretionary use development permits or subdivisions prior to the deadline for the May meeting. No other applications can be considered for the May meeting as there is insufficient time to review and circulate the application. There are no other agenda items for discussion. So our recommendation is that council move to cancel the Municipal Planning Commission meeting scheduled for May 27th, 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Penner.
I would make that motion that we move to cancel the MPC meeting scheduled for May 27th, 2021.
Great. Any questions or conversation? All those in favor of canceling?
Aye.
Carried unanimous. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. On to 5.4.1, the proposed animal control bylaw should read 1840. Thank you, Ms. Grossfield. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Council. Thank you. Today, I'm bringing to you a proposed animal control bylaw to replace the existing animal control bylaw. The recommended motion is all 3 readings, but I am going to go into a little bit more discussion around where we can take the bylaw and where it's been written now. The land use bylaw had hens added to it last year, and we need to reflect these changes in the proposed animal control bylaw that we're presenting to you today. We also have some enforcement challenges with bylaw 1714, the current animal control bylaw. The proposed bylaw does reflect legal opinion also received. So discussion, proposed changes and options to the animal control bylaw include, number 1 is the scope. This is where we have the most issues with enforcing this bylaw. So under the scope of 1714, the old bylaw, or the existing bylaw, it's only applicable to the residents of hamlets. In the bylaw that we're presenting to you today, it's applicable to land use bylaw districts, excluding agriculture district. However, we will continue to have enforcement challenges if we do not include this district too. We do have a workaround using working dog throughout the bylaw if council so chooses. Definitions to match the land use bylaw and to reflect the new wording throughout the bylaw. Part 2, the old bylaw rearranged to have running at large, nuisances, and threatening behaviors under 1 section. Part 3, hens and hen permitting. So the permitting of hens is permitted through the land use bylaw, but the animal control bylaw is there to allow for the enforcement of hens in those areas. Part 4 and Part 5 speaks to dogs and vicious dogs. Having our own declaration of a vicious dog allows us to another tool to, in combination with the Dangerous Dogs Act. Most of the Dangerous Dogs Act stuff has to go through the court system, and so it's kind of a lengthy and costly process to go that way. So if we did vicious dogs, it just kind of, it's the first step before we need to go through the court system. And we also did not put a limit on how many dogs or animals each resident can have. However, council can so choose. The existing bylaw does not have that, but many bylaws that we've researched, many of them do have restrictions on how many animals. Part 6 talks about general, includes permission to be able to have a parade and have animals going through hamlets. And then Part 7 through 12, it just includes the enforcement provisions, including the updated fine schedule. And we have provided some enforcement statistics as well related to animal control in 2019 and 2020. And so that kind of leads to that discussion piece. I'm not sure if you can bring that up or not. Please. Yes, thank you. So you'll see in 2019 in Kneehill County, we had 26 files. In the urbans, we had 14 files. In 2020, we had 33 files in Kneehill County. However, we do have challenges with this, enforcing this bylaw, because it is only applicable to the residents of the hamlets. So some of the challenges that we had, like you can see issue 1 there, is horses and cattle at large. And for the most part, we just help put people, we help the people put their animals back into their respective places. And so there's maybe some education that we can do on fencing and making sure that your fences are good before you put cattle in those areas. So animals being attacked, and so we've had 2 incidences where they were rural dogs, but the bylaw isn't applicable. So if they're on a farm, they're not applicable, and so they have come into other farms and have killed animals, or they've come into hamlets and killed animals, and we can't do anything about it. We basically just say, you need to go through the court system. Again, it talks about rural dogs at large. So if a rural dog runs into a hamlet, we have no, because it's only applicable to the residents. So now under this new bylaw that we've presented to you today, the scope actually is applicable to the land use districts. So that means if a rural dog runs into a hamlet, we can ticket that farmer for having that dog running at large. But we wouldn't be able to ticket that rural dog running at large in the county yet, right? So that's the kicker. So roosters in hamlets, and so this is one of the complaints, but of course now we've included it into our bylaw. No limit on the dogs. Kennels are part of the land use bylaw. They're not part of this animal control bylaw because they are only permitted in a few sections in the land use bylaw. And then cats and exotic animals are not being proposed in this bylaw, but they could be covered under animals if there is an issue. You know, I'm not sure if we want to go down the road of enforcing whether or not people can have peacocks, right? So it's just, it really opens up the amount of enforcement that we can do. So I do have a possible solution for number 3 in the rural dogs, and that would mean actually adding some definitions, including residential area, what that is defined as. And then I think I also have working dog, rural area. So it just gives a little bit more of that definition that might have to, if council so chooses to go that way, we could put them in here. But it is written at a halfway point so that we can actually do a little bit more enforcement and get through many of those complaints that were listed. Financial implications. We currently do not have a peace officer trained in animal control. The training costs about $6,000 to $10,000 per officer. Plus they also need the tools. And we also need a vehicle. It's not like we can just throw them into a kennel and put them in the back of a vehicle. That's actually illegal. You need to have an impoundment vehicle. We do right now have a contractor that comes in and captures those animals if they are deemed a public safety issue. And so they're taken to Red Deer after that capture. And then we can also charge that back now under the Master Rates Bylaw amendment that we did, that we can actually charge back those costs to the animal owner. Before that, we didn't have that possibility. And so council options are to pass all 3 readings or to give further direction on the changes discussed. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Reeve Woodstock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a concern with the term vicious dog. I don't know what the actual definition is of a vicious dog, but I don't think that we should be actually giving licenses out to vicious dogs. I don't know if there's another term that could be used, but something, maybe explain to me what vicious dog means before I continue on this, please, Deb.
Sure, through the Deputy Reeve. There is a definition under 3.26 for vicious dog, and it's basically has, in the past, chased, attacked, or bitten any person that's resulted in a physical injury or a conviction under this bylaw. And it kind of just continues to go down. It has damaged public or private property resulting in a conviction under this bylaw. So it's actually kind of once a dog has bitten or caused, we can ticket them, and then also as we ticket them, we would also issue them a vicious dog, I guess, tag.
Okay, well then I guess going back to what I was concerned about, I think once a dog has been convicted of something, I don't believe that we want to, and we're talking hamlets here. We're talking neighbors next door, and I don't believe vicious dogs should be licensed or allowed in our hamlets. Though that's my thoughts, but I don't know how you eliminate that problem. And I'll let you speak to that.
Go ahead, Ms. Grossfield.
Honestly, I'm not really sure how to get around it. I could go through other bylaws and see if we could find a different way to enforce that, but I don't have that information right now.
Okay, well, I guess my thoughts were that we shouldn't be issuing licenses to vicious dogs. Once a dog has proven to be, well, whatever they've proven to be, I don't believe that that should be allowed in a hamlet. I mean, if you want to have a guard dog, sure, but they have to be leashed and confined. And I know that's in the bylaw also, but I don't see anything about a guard dog, and I do see about vicious dog, and I just don't want to see vicious dogs being licensed into hamlets. That's just my concern.
Any other comments or questions, council? Councillor King?
I guess just to follow up on the Reeves comments, I'm not sure, Mr. Reeve, that we want vicious dogs licensed anywhere in Kneehill County, not just our hamlets. And if we've got a dog with a track record, other jurisdictions must deal with those in a more permanent way. And I'm wondering if there needs to be some review of what we're doing here, particularly as it relates to dogs that are dangerous. I know that guard dogs by their very nature are dangerous, and generally speaking, if you're going to have a guard dog, you have to sign and you have to do a bunch of things for that. But there are dogs that are running at large in Kneehill County that are quite dangerous, and as long as you can stay out of their way or ahead of them, you're okay. But if you can't do any of those two, then you're in real serious trouble. So I think we need to investigate this a little bit deeper and look at what possible options. I agree with the Reeve. I'm not sure there's a one strike and you're out kind of thing, but at the same time, I don't think that now you have a vicious dog license that permits your dog to continue to behave in the way it is. So sometimes people can pay tickets because they love their dog, but the rest of the county is at risk because of that dog's behavior. So I'm not happy with that section either.
Reeve Woodstock.
And I would agree with you fully, Councillor King. Vicious dogs should not be allowed in the, or vicious dogs in the ag zones should also not be something that we're looking for. But in this instance, the only ones that get licensed are the ones in the hamlets. And I think issuing a license for a vicious dog in a hamlet is the wrong way to go. And I think by the time a dog is designated as being vicious, it's probably offended more than once. And I know in the county we have ways of dealing with animals that let's just say are not welcome on our property and with our animals. But yeah, I truly have an issue with giving a license to a vicious dog in a hamlet, and that's the only place we issue licenses is in hamlets. So I just want to somehow eliminate that if we could.
Ms. Grofield, do you have something to add to those comments?
I guess, so the vicious dog is something in a bylaw that we can control right now, and this is our, I guess, our power to control it. Once it gets to the Dangerous Dogs Act, and once we go through that Dangerous Dogs Act, that goes to the court system, and the court system may still allow a dangerous dog in a hamlet. And I guess I kind of just wanted you to know that because it goes through the court system, and then it's a criminal. You have to prove that it's dangerous, how big the bite is. Like it's a bit more detailed once you actually get to the Dangerous Dogs Act. But that act is in place to not allow it, but a court system may still allow once a dangerous dog in a hamlet. So just kind of so you're aware. The other part of the vicious dog is that they have to abide by more rules, and it's a little bit easier to enforce those further restrictions, I guess. It's also more costly to license them usually, but I actually don't see it in here. That must be in the Master Rates Bylaw. And then if there are any restrictions for that vicious dog, then it would cost more as well if they had another attack. But I can definitely look through and give you some other options on where we can go with this for sure.
Councillor Christie.
That leads into my question of what's the jurisdiction of the SPCA and the court system and our bylaw? Are we duplicating services that we need or don't need? Like as a livestock producer, if I have an animal that's going to damage another animal, I'm going to answer to somebody for sure, whether the county has bylaws or not. But I know when we were handling hogs and stuff, there was pretty strict rules, and the SPCA not only handled just livestock or farm livestock, they had their jurisdictions pretty broad.
Ms. Grossman.
Through the Deputy Reeve. And that was kind of the question too that we asked when we went to the legal counsel and asked, you know, do we even need to have that vicious dogs in there? And she had suggested that it's a stepping tool for us to have, that we didn't have to go through the court system, that we could actually do something right away about it. When you go through a court system for a Dangerous Dogs Act, it takes time. It could take up to a year to go through the court system for a Dangerous Dog Act. So this would allow us to act quickly, I guess. The SPCA, I'm not exactly sure what their jurisdiction is. I think anybody can call the SPCA, but again, it's the time lag in order to enforce those issues.
Any more questions? Councillor Christie.
Just a comment, I have a good friend that is an SPCA officer, and he's taxed hard, so I think their reaction time would be slow, but they have pretty high jurisdiction. When they show up on scene, you're in a lot of trouble. So I know they have way more authority than we would have, but I don't know what the timeline is to get them involved.
And then through the Deputy Reeve, anytime that we do have a bitten person, dog, any dog person property damage, we do involve our CMP in those files. So
That's good information. Thank you. Councillor King.
I know, I know in the bylaw that's being proposed here, there is a lot of conversation around that vicious dog component, and there are a number of restrictions that are placed on those dogs and on the owners in terms of how they handle and a bunch of things. I guess my question would be, having done the background work on the bylaw and recognizing that confinement and muzzling and leashing and personal control of that dog is, do you feel that what's in this bylaw is sufficient for the ones that end up in our hamlets? And do you think that this kind of restriction should also be possibly expanded when a dog is defined as vicious for those in the ag district as well? So 2 questions. Do you feel that the restrictions that are adequate? And do you think that if we ended up with a vicious dog in an ag district, should that also be applied to that dog in that circumstance?
Ms. Grossfield.
I know that our enforcement officers would really love to be able to enforce this in the ag district. And so we did at one point write the bylaw that it was different and it included rural areas and farm dogs. And just because they did have those complaints about those farm dogs going to other areas, right? But they can be defined as a working dog. So we would love it if it went the extra mile and went the extra way. However, we do know that there is some pushback for that, right? Because they are farm dogs, and we don't want to impede those rights either, but we think that we can write a bylaw that can include enforcement of the rural areas as well, with, in respect to all of these sections a little bit better. And maybe we can just put it in the vicious dog if that's the concern. We can definitely look at that section and beefing that up better and making it a little bit more clear. And maybe it's even, in order to go through in order to ticket that vicious dog, they automatically have to go through the Dangerous Dogs Act as well. Like maybe it's a two-part so that we can actually start that court process as well. So that we have the immediate enforcement tool, plus we can go through the court system automatically. That might be something to consider.
Councillor Keever.
Before a dog can be classified though as vicious, he'd have to bite somebody, or else we'd have to do like these other jurisdictions and name specific breeds as being potentially dangerous. You know, a dangerous dog is, in the eyes of the owner, is not dangerous. But until he takes a hunk out of your backside, that's when he becomes dangerous. So you almost have to go breed specific.
Ms. Grosfield, do you have an answer to that comment?
I can do some research. Some of these dogs are not. Some of the dogs are not the breeds that you might normally find as biting dogs.
Councillor Penner.
It's just a touchy area, especially on the ag side, because fair enough if they wander onto another person's property and they attack, absolutely, it's a vicious dog. But if I have a vicious dog at home, it's not always vicious, but certain things trigger a dog to become vicious. And quite often we have dogs just to slow visitors, whether they're invited or not, and most times not, and that's why we have the dogs. So it's a very touchy area, but I have no problems if my dog, if I had a vicious dog, left my property onto someone else's property and hurt somebody or killed someone else's pet, no problem. But when it's on my own property, quite often there's a reason why we have those animals, because we're not around a lot. So the wording is, yeah, I'd like to see what you come back with.
Good points. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Hogan.
So just through Madam Chair, is just to clarify, what I believe we've heard is that the council's looking for, I should back that up, council supportive of the idea of expanding the enforcement capability into broader areas. So in terms of if there is a dog from a farm that's running at large, that we have some capacity there. Just want to clarify, I think that's what we've heard. You know, we obviously don't want to restrict the ability for people to have farm dogs. And Deb has talked about the definition of a working dog. I don't think we want to go into the realm of having farmers license their dogs and stuff like that. So that's where a tool like that would come into play. So we're not going to go that far, but if council's supportive of us enhancing the enforceability of the bylaw, then we'll look at that. The other thing that I think we've heard, and this is what I want to clarify, is to go back and we'll work this through legal counsel as well. But just in terms of if it's even just the terminology around vicious dogs. You know, if I don't know if there's a legal implication to the word license in this case, but I mean that's a question for legal counsel. But if it wasn't necessarily a license, but it was something else that was an identifier, or yeah, that's, you know, we can explore those. And I think what we've heard is council would like us to do that.
Beef Woodstock.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. I don't think anyone would voluntarily buy a vicious dog license. I mean, why would they? That would be admitting that they have a vicious dog. And that being said, I mean, we've got a dog on the farm here. I mean, we like to call him a guard dog, but he'd probably lick you to death before he did anything else to you. And we're just, I don't want to see licenses going outside of the hamlets. But I think within the hamlets, there is a right for the adjacent neighbor, which is, right there, to have the ability to know whether or not the dog next door is vicious or a guard dog or fluffy. But I mean, again, fluffy can be a guard dog, a vicious dog, or just a regular dog. And I don't know if breed specific would help. There are dogs that are bred specifically to be guard dogs. There are dogs bred to be specifically vicious, I guess would be the term, but I'm not sure why anybody would have one of those. So I just don't like the words vicious dog. If there's another term that we could use, or I guess we'll go back to legal and see what their thoughts are. But right now, I just can't support the bylaw the way it's written. The wording of vicious dog just bothers me. And sorry about that.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hogan.
Through you, Madam Chair, I was just going to say if those are things that council wants us to look at and want us to do rewordings of the bylaw, then the suggestion would be, well, you've got two options. You could still proceed with first reading, and we'd make those changes prior to second reading, or you could table the actual discussion until we'd come back with those changes. I think the recommendation I'd make is, given the nature of the changes, is probably to table.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Just want to comment further, I guess, before we move away from this. And just in response to Councillor Penner's comments, I believe that everyone has the right to protect their own property. And the dog of a nature that you're talking about, I think everyone has the right to have that dog, but it needs to be controlled and on your property. I've encountered those kind of dogs far ways away from home. I've encountered them in my yard, and I know, as Reeve Whitstock said, there is a permanent solution in the rural areas for dogs of that type. However, there are other ramifications to those types of actions. So if a dog is designated to protect property and stays on those properties, I have no problem with people having them. There's many yards I go into where you keep your hands in your pockets and you wait for the owners to appear, just because of the nature of the dog. And I understand why they have those animals. However, they need to be in the yard and in the control of the owner. Once they're outside of that, I think we have to be prepared to deal with those animals, especially if they have a track record. And so I'm looking for that kind of ability for our enforcement people, not just in the hamlets, but also in the ag area, if a dog has a proven track record. That's kind of what I'm looking for. So I certainly wouldn't want to impede somebody's ability to protect their property and to protect themselves. However, there's a specific environment in which those things happen. And so, like I say, I've encountered, and not just one dog sometimes, but 2 or 3 that are running at large, farm dogs, and they're not friendly for sure. So I'd like to see our enforcement people have some way of dealing with those type of situations. So that's my last comment.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Penner.
So, Deb, do you want us to go through this animal control statistics? So you did the little spreadsheet here of the enforcement challenges to bring up a few things, like you have horses and cattle at large, right? Are you wanting to get some of our feedback of what we're thinking with all of these, or what you're thinking here?
Through the Deputy Reeve. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I think. I think for the most part, I do have that, just from you guys talking of can you bring up those 5 enforcement stats and options? The horses and cattle, I still do believe that it's an education issue. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a good idea to be ticketing those. They are still livestock and they're out. We would just, again, working with the people are the best the best solution in my mind. Well, mostly in all of these, but, and I think that I did get direction on the animals being attacked, chased, or killed by the rural dogs. Councillor King had just mentioned that, and the same with the dogs, the rural dogs at large, causing those traffic problems. And I think, again, that's pretty clear in my mind of where we can go next. We didn't really talk on the hens, but the hen section in the land use bylaw, I basically took that land use bylaw and put in a whole new section for the hens. So they reflect those, all the issues, and then we actually added a few more in the animal control bylaw to try to make sure that we have all the hen issues covered. So I think that's done, and then it's limiting the number of animals. We haven't talked about that. That's one of them. I'm not sure if that's something that you would like to consider. And then we also do not ticket we don't license cats. Cats is not part of this. There's many bylaws that do have cats in them, though. I guess I also want to make council aware right now, we don't charge for licensing. So even rural animals, if they wanted to register their pet, they can register their pet with Kneehill County right now. And just so that we have a number that we can track them. It's really for trackable purposes, so.
Councillor Penner.
Yeah, number 5 was the one I really want to talk about. Like with number 1, with horses and cattle, if there's chronic animals are out on the ag side, usually Livestock Identification Service or somebody else is bought into it, so I don't think we need to get into that too much. Usually somebody's left a gate open or something, or a visitor to take a photo or whatever. It's happened to all of us with livestock. The gate, somebody has entered the property when not asked to. But yeah, number 5. And I have heard this from different residents about the number of pets that certain residents have. So I was just wondering about a discussion on number 5 to the limit.
And
also I say that, sorry, because we did limit chickens, right?
Right.
And that's why I thought as a council we should talk about this, that there's a limit on chickens, but
my question to you, Councillor Penner, is are you speaking for both egg and for hamlets, or specifically hamlets when you ask that question?
just hamlets.
Thank you. Ms. Grossfield, can you add anything?
Through the Deputy Reeve, we are actually just kind of looking up what a kennel license would start at. However, a kennel license is not allowed in a hamlet. It's like we don't even speak to it in here, the kennel licensing. So that definitely is something that we can put in here and reflect that land use bylaw. But kennel licenses aren't allowed in hamlets. So you're right, like the amount of animals can get exceedingly high without that limit on them.
Councillor King.
I said I wasn't going to comment anymore, but this one I will. I know of people who can have 5 dogs and have them entirely under control, and I know of people who have 1 dog and that dog is absolutely out of control. So again, I think it's hard to, I think maybe there should be a limit, but it's hard to specify what that is because dog owners differ as much as dogs do. And there are people who understand and are able to control dogs and thus can manage more. And then there are people who have absolutely no clue and the dog is completely out of control. So do we license animal owners rather than animals? You know, and those vicious hens in the hamlets, we have to really manage them carefully. I think dogs are a much bigger problem for us than our hens, for sure. So my last comment.
Thank you. Ms. Grossfield, have you, in your knowledge of history, ever seen where a numerous amount of animals been a problem in a hamlet? So, you know, cat lady with 10 cats?
Through the Deputy Reeve, yes, I have seen in more urban areas. I mean, But I think that also having pot-bellied pigs was another issue. Like the issues can be numerous when you don't have a pet owner who is being responsible, I think is the big kicker there. And so, but many, like I actually couldn't find a bylaw that didn't limit the number of animals that people can have. Again, it might be something that might be a little bit harder to enforce because there could be 5 cats in a house and we wouldn't know that. So that's the one that's kind of difficult to enforce, I guess, long term.
I guess sometimes it's just so that if you ever had to, it would be there to utilize. Great. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Christie?
I was just looking through the fine schedule. I'm having trouble with part 6, 10.2 is lead and ride livestock within a hamlet has a fine. If that animal's under control, why would there be any concern going through a hamlet?
Through the Deputy Reeve?
Yes.
So 10.2 is what you're saying? So in here, it actually says that you need permission. So in the section in the bylaw in part 6, it says that you need permission in order to ride that animal through a hamlet. So if you have a horse, you can't just ride it through whichever hamlet, Huxley, I guess, without having permission from the municipality. So that's what that is, and we can ticket them.
Don't think that's a broadly known piece of information.
Well, and back to, I think, you don't like to turn a blind eye to it, but we are a rural, and so I'm sure if it's under control or whatever, and they do come across it, it'll be more of an education thing to them, because we are the rural way of life, and yeah, that one I had trouble with, but I mean, it has to be there, but I'm not sure of different wording, but I did have a bit of a problem with that as well.
I can look at options for that as well on the wording end of that. We just actually had, and again, it's an urban, but there was one that actually rode through Three Hills. But if they go on the sidewalk, do they have the means to clean that up? I guess is kind of the issue. And so you don't want that on the roads either without them being able to clean up after their pet. But again, that goes to the responsible pet owner.
Councillor Penner.
I have one, hopefully last comment here for you, Deb. A premise ID is required for animals to have it now. It's right. It's in the legislation now. It's a required. Everybody with certain animals or all animals, well, not all animals, like chickens, horses, whatever. They have to have a premise ID, and you can get a fine of $100, I think, to start with or whatever. Should premise ID be in the definitions? So they know what it is, being it is our compulsory thing in order to have certain animals. Because not everybody knows about it. And even people that come to the county on acreages and then they get a horse, they don't realize a lot of them that they have to have a premise ID. It's very easy to get, but they just don't take the step to get it.
I do believe that that is covered under the land use bylaw, but I can definitely take a look and see if we need to put it in this one for sure.
I just thought being that you were able to fine people for not having it, I just wondered if it should be in here as a definition. But if you could get further information, please.
Definitely take it.
Great. What's council's wishes? Councillor King.
So I'd make the motion that we table the animal control bylaw and request the changes we've talked about today and further information.
Thank you. Councillor Christie.
Do we need a timeline when that comes back then or not?
Mr. Hogan.
If council wants to put one in, I think administration's intent is that we would look at this stuff fairly quickly and have it back because it's, this particular one is there, we have enforcement issues out there. It doesn't serve anybody prolong it. The changes council's looking at, I don't see any of those being burdensome for us to explore. So you can put a time limit in, but I think the intent is this one will be back fairly quickly.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Councillor King.
I guess my assumption with the motion was that the intent would be that it come back fairly quickly, so, and it sounded like that was, from the gist of our conversation, that was the direction we were headed, so I'll leave my tabling motion as is.
Thank you. So Councillor King has moved that we table the proposed animal control bylaw and direct administration to make changes to proposed bylaw and bring back to a future council meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimous. Awesome. On to the next topic. Thank you, Ms. Grossfield. So up to corporate services, 6.1, Canada Revenue Agency authorization. Hello. When you're ready.
Through the Deputy Reeve, this item deals with authorization requirements through Revenue Canada. As people realize, Revenue Canada's rules are fairly restrictive. So currently, staff on record have left the organization, and it leaves us with a difficulty of not being able to communicate with Revenue Canada. You may want to ask why anyone would want to communicate with Revenue Canada, but occasionally there is a need. So this report is basically, given that we are a municipality, Revenue Canada recognizes only council as the grantor of authority for their purposes. So this report is seeking the authority to advise through council resolution that the authorized individuals to deal on behalf of the corporation would be the CAO, Director of Corporate Services, and Manager of Financial Planning. Again, Revenue Canada, it's a multiple approval process, so numerous staff within the corporation do have approvals to access certain information, but in order to change approval rights and do inquiries on behalf of the corporation, staff in those key functional areas currently do not have any authorities through CRA. So that's what the report is intending to do, to get a resolution of council to allow us to amend the authorities on the records of Revenue Canada.
Thank you. Sounds pretty important that we do something here. Reeve Woodstock.
Yes, thanks, Bill. What I would like to do is move that the following administrative staff have authorized to conduct the affairs of Kneehill County with Canada Revenue Agency on behalf of Kneehill County Council, Mike Hogan, CAO, Bill McKinnon, Director of Corporate Services, and Marika von Merbeck, Financial Planning Coordinator.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimous. Six point two, disposition of surplus lands policy. Back to you, Bill.
Again, through the chair, as council is well aware, administration on a rotating basis brings forward amendments to various policies of council. This is one that's up for renewal. Again, it's some minor changes in the policy, basically to set out the administrative framework that's better aligned with the intent of and requirements under the MGA. It basically heightens the process of declaring land surplus by council, deals with maximizing the fiscal return on the sale of any asset and sets out processes for advertising and the sale. There are a few exceptions that may deal with properties that are of significant interest to other agencies or other groups in terms of nature conservatory groups and the like. There are specific flexibilities to deal with unique situations such as landlocked parcels that can't be marketed or developed as such, and basically sets a framework for staff to go about determining what properties we wish to retain as a municipality and which properties may be surplus to the needs of the municipality rather than dealing with them on a ad hoc basis. So there would be another process after this policy was adopted to start creating, I believe at the last meeting, one of the councillors asked what surplus land the county currently has. Well, this would allow us to start developing an inventory of what lands we have and what purposes we may wish to retain them, such as road allowances or other properties that we have no intention or would not recommend the council we dispose of. But that basically is in a nutshell that makes it clear that rather than bringing an individual parcel to the council when a ratepayer wishes to acquire the property, that it's done in a consistent fashion for all the assets the county does have control over.
Any questions or comments? Councillor King.
So then I'd make the motion that council approve the disposition of surplus lands policy 16-16 as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, Councillor King moved that council approve the disposition of surplus lands, policy 16-16 as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimous. Thank you. And I'm going to call for a 15-minute break. Great.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that. I was just listening to our Prime Minister tell us how great a job he's doing on COVID, so.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Just want to be sure you're back before we called back to order, which we'll now do. We are back in order, and we will go on to our agenda item 7.1, the 2021 Tax Rate Bylaw 1834. I'm back to you, Bill.
Again, through the chair, this item is back for hopefully third and final reading. At its meeting April 27th, council gave first and second reading. It was not unanimous consent, so it's back before council today. Again, the tax rate bylaw is the final step in to give effect to setting the tax rates for municipality for the year, and is predicated on the budget that council previously adopted at its meeting on February 23rd, which was a precursor to 3 or 4 days of budget deliberations by council. So that's, this is nearing the end of the process. Again, the tax bills will go out later in the year with the due date in late October. I'm not going to summarize the previous presentation at the last council meeting, but if there are any particular questions of council, I'd be pleased to entertain them.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? So just to reiterate, we've gone through this process quite intensely, and so we're on the last stages, and I'd love to hear what council would like to do at this point. Councillor Penner.
I don't see any discussion. Oh, sorry, is that Jerry? I guess I can make the motion, we can have discussion. I'd make the motion that council give third and final reading to bylaw 1834, that being a bylaw for the 2021 tax rates.
Thank you. Reeve Woodstock, did you have, or were you just wanting to make the motion?
Yeah, I just wanted to be on record to make the motion, but that's fine. Appreciate Councillor Penner doing that, so.
Mr. Hugo, do you have any, we just want to verify that you're on and can hear me.
I am, but trying not to stream too much because my daughter's in a video conference right now also.
That's great. We just want to be sure we can get everyone's vote. Thank you for answering. Any other questions or comments before we go to vote? Okay, so we have the motion to give third and final reading to bylaw 1834, that being a bylaw for the 2021 tax rates. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's in favor, Glenn? Yeah. Carried unanimous. Thank you. On to new business. 8.1, Municipal Elections. Oh, this is going to be exciting.
It certainly is.
Go ahead, Mr. Vanderkool, when you're ready. Mrs. Vanderkool.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve. So some election processes require approval from the elected municipal council. This report will cover voting subdivisions and special ballot. So speaking on voting subdivisions, municipalities, regardless of the results of their nomination period, will be required to provide voting opportunities for the Senate election and provincial referendum to all electors within the jurisdiction. As Kneehill County operates on a division system, there is a possibility that one or numerous divisions are claimed and therefore not requiring a municipal election to be held. In those instances, the province will still require polling stations to be established to allow for electors to vote in the Senate election and provincial referendum. It is administration's position that although the polling stations will still be established for those opportunities, there likely will not be a necessity to have numerous voting stations for electors to cast their Senate election and referendum votes. If municipal acclamations do occur in one or multiple divisions, it would be it would be administration's recommendation that these divisions be combined with a polling station that is holding an election, or to allow for one central polling location for electors to cast their vote. This would still provide the required voting opportunities, but done so in a much more cost-effective manner. In order to facilitate this, polling subdivisions would need to be created which are governed under Section 36(1) of the Local Authorities Election Act. As such, a resolution of council will be required to provide the returning officer the authorization to amend the polling subdivisions within Kneehill County in the event that acclamations do occur following nomination day. If this is not the case and a municipal election is required to be held in each division, the polling subdivisions will remain the same, the existing divisions, and polls held in each respective division. It should be noted that it is administration's recommendation to pass a resolution to allow the flexibility for the returning officer, provided that the reality of the number of divisions requiring an election will not be understood until after nomination day. If council does not permit for alternate polling subdivisions to be created, the returning officer will continue with the existing plans to offer election day voting opportunities within all 7 electoral divisions. So that was all about voting subdivisions, and our next discussion is about special ballot. So Section 77.1 of the Local Elections Authority Act states an elector who is unable to vote at an advance vote or at a voting station on election day because of physical disability, absence from the local jurisdiction, or being a returning officer, deputy returning officer, substitute returning officer, constable candidate, official agent, or scrutineer who may be located on election day at a voting station other than that for the elector's place of residence may apply to vote by special ballot. We did not offer special ballot at the last election, but it did offer institutional vote. Due to COVID-19, we do not want to put election workers, residents, and caregivers at risk, and a special ballot would be an option for these residents instead of institutional voting. An elected authority may, by resolution passed prior to nomination day, provide for special ballots and provide that the application for special ballots may be made by any one of the following methods: in writing, by telephone, by fax, in person, by email, or by secure website. Administration recommends that council approves by resolution the application for special ballots be made in writing, by telephone, by email, or in person. The resolution by council should also set out the applications must be submitted between August 3rd, 2021 and Friday, October 15th, 2021 at 4 p.m. That's the Friday prior to election. Council may also set a time earlier than the closing of the voting stations on election day for when special ballots must be received by the returning officer. It is proposed that the special ballots be received by 4 p.m. on election day. The 4 p.m. cutoff is within Kneehill County Administration Office hours of operation and ideally provides the election office time to open special ballot envelopes and tabulate prior to the close of the voting stations. Communications will be developed to ensure electors are made aware of the option to vote by special ballot, as well as highlighting the deadline to submit. The returning officer will work with electors to ensure that those who request special ballot packages are aware of the dates to return the marked ballots. The financial implications of this, of these two options is, it is expected that Kneehill County will receive a $2 per capita for divisions that have municipal elections occurring, and $4 per capita for divisions that do not have municipal elections occurring for municipal affairs. And we have also budgeted the election in our 2021 operating budget. And that's the end of my presentation. Is there any
Thank you.
questions?
Any questions of the presenter? Reeve Whitstock.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderkool. Appreciate the information. I do have a question though. In the financial implications, it is expected that Kneehill County will receive the $2, blah, blah. Anyway, I won't read it all. Is that per person voting, or do we have some sort of a voters list to know how many per cap there are in each division?
They're going by per capita, by what our municipal affairs census was. It's the 5,001 number. So I don't know how they're going to, because we don't know how many per ward it is, but it is the 5,001 they're going to pay, not by how many people vote.
Okay, thank you very much.
So just to clarify that again, we would have $4 per cap if we did not have a division needing an election. How will they determine that?
I have,
No idea.
I don't
Okay.
have that information.
I thought that's what you said. I wanted to be
Yeah.
sure. Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Hogan?
Through you, Madam Chair, this isn't necessarily a direct relation to the topic, but it's come up in the discussion. As in some of the changes that the province has made, this has been a concern that municipalities have put back, is that a lot of municipalities like ourselves, we have an approximation of what is in a population for a ward, but we don't have an exact number. That's come up as a concern in different provincial pieces of legislation, like the recall legislation and things like that, that look for that information in order to determine whether something put forward on that front is valid or not. So between this and some of the other election pieces, that has been a concern that municipalities have put back to the province and saying, you know, you're placing these on here, but most municipalities don't keep actual track of these numbers. They only have approximations. So how that's to be determined, as Carolyn has said, is still, there's an unknown there, is whether we would be able to put that approximation forward and it be accepted or not. Really through the motions here is we are looking to facilitate the vote through means that are safe for both the residents and our staff. That's the special ballots. And wanting to make sure that if we do have a ward that is acclaimed, that we're not going through the cost of having returning officers, having a polling station rental, having all of the other factors that go with that, just to facilitate the provincial referendum questions. So what council would see on the ground is if we did have a ward that was acclaimed, individuals from that ward would still be able to vote on the provincial questions. They would just need to do so at a different polling station that was running. So if you're what would be deemed your local polling station, if the ward is acclaimed, you wouldn't necessarily, that wouldn't be open. You would have to say whether it was Three Hills or wherever else that it was designated. So that's what we're looking to establish.
Thank you. Councillor Penner?
Just further to what Mr. Hogan was saying there, so if someone is acclaimed, we're not actually telling those residents where they have to vote. They can go to any of the other ones, or would you be telling them exactly which station they need to go to?
That is that's a really good question, Councillor Penner. I'm still trying to figure that out. I, for now, would tell them to go to a different polling station, but then I got a mixed from the Alberta elections that because they're just taking from Kneehill County their referendum questions, like they're counting them as at one. So I'm still trying to wait to find out if they could go to any polling station that is open, that's closest to them. But I haven't gotten direct confirmation that that is the thing. But for now, I'm going to designate a polling station until I get further clarity from Alberta elections.
Okay, and in saying that, sorry, I meant within Kneehill County, not any polling station, but just any within Kneehill County.
No, it has to be within Kneehill County. Sorry, Councillor Penner. Yes.
Any other questions or comments? What are your wishes? Councillor Penner?
I would make the motion that council authorize the returning officer to divide the local jurisdictions into voting subdivisions and may alter the boundaries, but may not alter them between the time of the giving of notice of an election and the election day. In the event that the returning officer does not divide the local jurisdictions into alternative voting subdivisions, each municipal division shall be considered an individual voting subdivision.
Thank you. It's a lot of words. Any questions or comments? Discussion? Okay, I will not be reading that out. It's on your screen, and I will call the question. All those in favor of Councillor Penner's motion? Jim, are you there? No. So carried unanimous. And one more piece of item, Councillor King.
Where's Brandy when we need her, right?
Yes.
I'd make the motion that council allow for special ballot to electors who meet the requirements under the Local Authorities Election Act. An application for a special ballot shall be made to the returning officer in writing, by telephone, in person, or by email. Applications for special ballots shall be submitted between August 3rd, 2021 and 4 p.m. on Friday, October 15th, 2021. Completed special ballots shall be received by the returning officer no later than 4 p.m. on election day, and the procedures to be followed for voting by special ballot are those procedures set out in the Local Authorities Election Act.
Well said. Thank you, Councillor King. Any questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor of Councillor King's motion? Opposed? Mr. Hugo, are you there? Okay, carried unanimous. All right, 8.2, Kneehill County Scholarship Policy 15.5. Go ahead again, Mrs. Van Riedickule.
Let's get situated here. Okay, so council reviewed policy 15-5, Kneehill County Scholarship at the April 20th, 21 Committee of the Whole meeting. At this meeting, the committee advised administration to make the following amendments to the policy to bring back to a future council meeting for ratification. So the amendments you guys wanted to see were the 20% academic achievement, 50% written essay, 30% letters of reference, and contributions to schools or community leadership activities and personal achievements. Policy to include under the application a list of contributions made to school or community leadership activities and personal achievements. There's no financial implications to this, to these changes. Is there any questions or questions to the changes that were made to the policy?
I think these changes reflect the fact that anyone could qualify for the scholarship from various degrees of abilities and skills. Any questions or discussion? What would council like to do? Reeve Woodstock.
I would move the council approves policy 15-5, the scholarship policy as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? Wow, then let's take.
Sorry, just a
Oh,
quick,
yeah.
just
Go
a
ahead,
quick comment
Councillor
on the
Bennett.
question, the essay topic. I really like what I see.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving policy 15-15? Carried unanimous. Seasonal road bans. Mr. Hogan, when you're ready.
Through Madam Chair, this item that is up before you was at the request of Councillor Christie, and my understanding is wanting to have a discussion with council around the county's road ban practices, and more specifically looking forward into the future and the possibility of altering those a little bit differently so that at near the end of the season, and I'll use that season in quotation marks, but near the end of the season, that the road bans be not necessarily lifted, but at least lightened to facilitate some of the traffic that's out there. But with that foundation for the discussion, I'll maybe defer the item to Councillor Christie.
I guess my concern is the landlocked farms by the light pavement, that we've got no allowance for them to get to gravel from their yards. It doesn't matter whether they're a seed grower or just an ordinary farm, they got to get off their yard to gravel. at the shortest possible route. So I guess one of my thoughts was that instead of enforcing the 75% road ban for everybody, that we give them an exemption at least to 90% from their yard to the closest gravel. But somehow we have to let them do their business when the season says we got to go to work, we got to go to work. Like, and in my farm, my drill is the worst offender, and I can't lighten the load.
Any questions to the presenter of Councillor? Any comments you have for us, please, Brad?
Yeah, through the Deputy Reeve. I do believe farm machinery would be exempt, right? So your drill would be exempt, but not your highway tractor licensed vehicles. A little background I did with Alberta Transportation on their road ban exemption permit request. So they do have a hauled on banned roads for fair access to farm. So they've got a policy set up that talks about feed to farm, livestock, or grain to market, seed grain for cleaning and farm use only. They do have durations. They only have that permit for 2 days out of the season. I'll just talk about the stuff that is in season. So they'll have a 75% road ban, but they'll allow 90% throughout the season for processed feed, livestock feed that has been rolled, split, ground, pellets delivered to the farm, to a farm. Dead animal surrendering also is a 90% seasonal ban. Seed potatoes are actually at 100%. There's no road ban on seed potatoes. 90% for feed to a feedlot must be transported on B-train or tractor, semi-trailer units only. So those are all seasonally banned exemptions that farmers get for provincial roadways that are not banned. And most provincial roadways have some sort of ACP pavement, and they could be the seal coat on top of that. What our seal coat roads are, chip seal, are strictly seal coat, chip seal on top of base. There's our seal coat on top of mainly ACP roads. So they do have those exemptions. Also looked up, there are some other municipalities. Rocky View's gone 90% on their paved roads and 75% on their chip seal or oil surface roads. So majority of our roads, so the 30-4 would be classified as a paved road. So the Linden Road from 21 all the way out to the west boundary. That one we've done in the past. We've done 90%, tried 90% on that road. We just look at it every year a little bit differently because we know by putting a specific date of when and where, we've never done that. So we've always looked at the weather and done it, the ban based on the weather. Parkland County also does, very similar to that. Parkland has put out, road bans are strictly dependent on weather, therefore the time period mentioned can fluctuate. So by putting a specific date, that is, you're still having that chance. This year, the frost is, every year is a little bit different, We take our ban off starting this Friday, May 14th, because we seen the weather was good, most of the snow was gone. We're gonna see most of the frost, hopefully it's out of the ground. We've had it to May 24th. Most of the provincial roadways within our county are probably mid-June to up to the 24th of June for them to lift their bans. So it is hard to put a specific date. However, if council's wish is to look at that, definitely could look at, farm access to the nearest gravel road. Policing that might be a little bit difficult, and I would put that topic to the peace officers to answer that question. So
I guess my concern was that most of those roads, we fenced them in with the chip seal. Like, the farms have been there longer than the road was chip sealed.
Yeah.
And they still have to have access to get their crop in a timely manner, and they gotta be efficient to do that. Running at 75% on my seed truck, that don't work.
And I think that's important too, is also look at, the price of what asphalt is right now. We closed that tender at $63 a metric ton for asphalt, where previous years we've seen it as high as over 117. So it is greatly reduced, as long as council wants to keep that same road plan. If that's the desire of those roads, is to have those, whether it be oiled or paved, I'll leave that to council to make that decision. But if they go to a paved road, you can look at those seasonally banned road at, say, 90%, or look at the road and determine whether you want to put a ban on it at all. Lifting those bans altogether early spring could have difficulties if oil and gas are ramped up and raring. They're going to use those roads just as well as farmers. So I don't have it on the screen, but Parkland County, you guys can see this here. So everything in red is their banned roads. So they have a number of banned roads up in their county due to, they got a lot of gravel in that Wabamun Lake area. Yeah, they still ban those roads in the spring too. They do have, like I said, they do have some of those exemptions for farmers, but it basically follows the provincial guideline. Fertilizer is exempt. Fresh milk, cream is exempt. They also have a 90% allowance for bread, mail, heating fuel, stuff like that. So domestic drinking water is at 80%. So those are all government recommended or regulated restrictions. So.
I guess that goes back to how do we make agriculture work when we fence them in, basically. They need to get to gravel to be able to conduct their business. And the season forces that. We can't.
Yeah, looking at exemptions, I guess if council wants us to look at that option and bring back options of road ban exemptions for people who live along those sections of road, that's something that could be looked at and then brought back to council. So if you live along that road, is that where you want the exemption, or is it anybody who owns land on that road? But then what pressures would that put back for permit-wise for peace officers to enforce that? So it does pose some difficulties of, yes, we can implement that. However, how do you police that program? And I said I'll leave that up to Natalie to maybe answer those questions.
We know it's gonna happen, and I guess that's part of my concern. I don't want a 75% road ban where a farm's gonna do their job and be breaking the law. That's not fair to us or to them. And at the same time, the season says we gotta go to work.
No, understandable on that. It does pose pressures on municipalities that have these, whether it's the municipality or a provincial roadway. Everyone has those issues. I mean, within the province, we've got the 575 is banned from Carbon to the Hesketh Corner. The 575 Acme West is also banned. I can't remember exactly where the boundary lines are, but the province gives that list. Then they do not give any exemptions out for that either. So, if we do get those exemptions, I myself, through my budget, would probably come back and ask for more money within that budget for repair to those roads, knowing that we will probably see damage to those roads. We've been fortunate enough with the municipality that, our chip seal roads have been replaced anywhere in the 15 years I've been here, every 5 to 7 years roughly. So we're always on the tail end of, okay, let's get that fixed before it actually falls apart. If you go west of the Allingham Road, west of 583, you make it to the 791. you'll see some issues on that road. No signs, no nothing on some of those, and they're rather large holes. So it can be done, it's just that at what pressure do we want to put back on budgets to fix those roads, so.
We still have to do business. Agriculture is a major part of our industry, and the season says we gotta go to work. And that's where I proposed the 90% road ban, is to try and keep it at least legal. I know our trucks, when we have to cross that soft road, we try and load them lighter, but we'll never get to 75% and still get the drill serviced.
I think if you're looking at an agricultural exemption, I would leave it as agricultural. So all agricultural business would be classified as 90%. That way, that's easier for the peace officers to control that, where there won't be commercial trucks using that road and beating it up. If that was the case, if May 1st was going to be a timeline. And would you agree with that, Natalie?
Sorry, Natalie, can you come to a mic so we can have?
So we do use the road data for our permitting process. So all of those things I can look them up and I will have access to them through road data.
We wouldn't want to use road data for a farm exemption, no. No.
Okay.
We would we do that in-house.
I think it's like $15 per permit or something like that. It would have to be paid. Otherwise, I wouldn't have access to that, or they would have to, I don't know. I've never dealt with permits through any other way other than that, so.
So some of the permitted processes through other municipalities is they do in-house for agricultural. Okay. They don't do external. So when we do external, it costs us money. So that's why we get those permits through road data for commercial and industrial moving. Again, whether that vehicle was plated as a agricultural, there's an agricultural sticker on those vehicles compared to commercial vehicles. And I think that's where it would come into policing it, whereas they may get stopped, but they may have that exemption for 90% on the ag roads. I think that's really the only, or the easiest way to do it, rather than get everyone to get a permit that wants to travel that road. I think agricultural wise, you would just put that across the board if you wanted to pick a specific date to start that 90% and say all ag, and that wouldn't be regulated to businesses, or if you're ag plated, you would get that exemption, so.
Thank you. Our CEO, Mr. Hogan, did you have something to add, or?
Yes, just in the discussion, there is, through you, Madam Chair, I think Mr. Buchert's brought up a couple of things that are a note in the discussion. Is, you know, we can look at ways of facilitating agriculture. What council's really looking at is the choices that you want to make as they relate to what you feel the municipality's role is versus, you know, how far you go into there. And I think the point that we can facilitate those things. If council chooses to go that route, then you also need to expect that there will be budget pressures by making that choice, right? So the choice can be made. There will be a repercussion on the other side, as if the road budget needs to be increased to account for those additional repairs that we're going to see, and that's, you know, that's a choice that council can make. The other one, which is a longer term one that I'll put out there, and Brad sort of brought this up already, is when we look at the overall road plan for the municipality. That road plan is slated to be back in the near future for an update, because as council's aware, we've changed the way that we manage our roads, and there's probably we're ahead of where that road plan had initially slated us to be. So there's some updates needed there, but as part of that discussion, council can also discuss around what the overall philosophies of the road system are. And Brad's correctly alluded to the idea as a discussion point there. Do we continue with chip seal, and every 4 or 5 years, or depending on the road, what that works out to, or look long-term to move towards more of an ACP or a 90% or ban-free standard, of course, there'll be budget pressures to those decisions as well, right? And some of those will fluctuate depending on the price of asphalt. But again, that's also a discussion point or something that council can enter into, is if down the road, as we replace those, the standard is to move towards more of those higher level of surfacing, so that there is less need for the bands, or the bands can be lighter. So there is a discussion point there too, that in your current term, you're likely not going to see that, but in the next council term, there will be a discussion there that they will have for sure.
Councillor Keever.
I guess I'm kind of against exemptions. Just recently out in my division, there was an agricultural operation that made one hell of a mess of a road and probably cost the county a lot of money to fix it. If that had been an oil company, we'd have made them pay for that. But we give the farmer the exemption to haul the overload weight, and then we exempt him from paying for the repairs. He's getting a pretty good deal. And we start giving exemptions. We're making the other industries a little upset with our policies. I think where we have something, just stay the way it is.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Christie.
I guess my comment is still that whether the road ban is 75% or there's an exemption, the traffic's gonna happen in the spring. If there's a 90% ban on agriculture to get to gravel, is something that's workable on both sides, I believe. And the season's gonna dictate when we gotta go to work, and that's where the road ban, the 75% ban doesn't work. Like it's a 90% ban would keep those trucks closer to legal maybe, and be less damaging than what we have. I fully appreciate that we have some operators that are completely overloading their trucks and they need to be addressed. But we still have to get our crop in. That's the catch. And the chip seal came after the farm did. Like most big farm sites have been there for a long period of time. The chip seal went by them. And I agree with the long-term discussion that when you look at 25-1, if we kept doing the chip seal over a long period of time, it's cheaper to heavy pave it now. I mean, that's the example I'm going to use.
Deputy Reeve?
Councillor King.
I guess I'm sympathetic with where you're going with this. And if I believed that we could give a 90% exemption to farmers and they'd make the shortest route to gravel, I might be in favor of doing what you're suggesting. However, my fear is that we'll have a 90% exemption for farms and it's not the shortest route to gravel. They'll be traveling our chip seal the length of their trip. And so I think your argument probably has more strength if you talk about specific farmers and specific situations, landlocked individuals. But to give a general exemption to agriculture, I have a hard time with that one. Like when you're crossing one piece of pavement from gravel to gravel and you're crossing over, that's not a problem in my mind. It's when you spend that overload truck and you turn on the Hoppins corner and you turn off on Highway 21 and you know you're overloaded, and that pavement's not standing up to that. And so I agree with the conversation that says if we're going to go away from this, light pavement chip seal approach we're taking, and we're going to go to ACP and put a real road in there, huge ramifications in terms of cost to maintain and to put those roads in place initially, Or do we just have a conversation that says we're going back 100% to gravel?
Where would council like this to go?
I'm not sure about the policing or to specifically identify farms to get to gravel. That puts a load on our policing service, I believe. I don't know, at the end of the day, one of the things I've never thought about is landlocked quarters where you gotta go in and seed it and get out of there, but I know that for yard sites, we gotta be able to operate our business in that spring season. And I think a 90% road ban would be better than a 75% for me, because it's something that is workable for the farm side, and the 75% I don't think is seasonally. So I'd like to make a motion that would ask administration to come back with a specific agriculture-related, landlocked farm site 90% road ban in the spring season.
Thank you. I'll just let our motion get printed up on the screen. While we do that, Reeve Woodstock.
Yeah, I know we're in a dilemma here. We have people that are landlocked, and that being stated, I think I'd probably be supportive of some sort of exemption, but not an exemption to haul all the way down a chip sealed, you know, at 75% banned road. I think that first access onto gravel would be workable. I know it wouldn't be workable for our bylaw officers, but that being stated, that does give the opportunity for our landlocked farmers to be loaded up to 90% and to get on a gravel road. But I guess we'll see what recommendations come back.
Thank you. I think I hear you say, Councillor Christie, that the point for you is let's give opportunity for there to be a reasonable law that is followed, as opposed to knowing it's not being followed and leaving it as is your dilemma, right? We want to have the laws that are reasonable enough to follow so that people are not outside of the law. And if we leave it this way, there may be too many people outside of the law on a regular basis, and that just is a mockery of any of our bylaws then.
Yeah, I think you're right, that there's no sense having a bylaw that it's not workable for both sides at this point. I'm just reading the motion here.
Just a bit more of a discussion.
Councillor Penner?
With the whole bylaw, unless you actually live on one of these roads, you really you don't understand how it impacts your operation. But in saying that, yes, we have to be specific. You can't just open it wide up. It's just to the first gravel and hope for honesty that they do turn off on the first gravel. But and my point is, and most of us don't understand ratepayers because we don't live, we're not landlocked, to put it that way.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Christie?
Brad, the way that motion is written gives you the parameters to work on the landlocked part of it? Or do you want that in there to be the closest possible gravel road? Or is that how that will come back?
Through the Deputy Reeve, I think that's fine. You know, there's different ways we'll look at it. There are ways where, you know, if we come back with a road use agreement policy, we don't have one of those. So if we were to come back with that, within that policy, a policy like that, we could look at those exemptions. So a road use policy, we could say each person along that section of road that be affected by that would sign that. We know that that route is from here to here, and we would share that information with the peace officers. I think that would be the easiest way to do it, and a road use agreement internally would be the easiest, probably to handle that. We can still put the 75% road ban, so anything that comes through road data, which is usually commercial or industry, would still be at that ban. But a road use agreement, say with anyone who lives along that section of road or has a quarter that's landlocked, would be you go from here to this range road or this township road to get to it. So, and that's the road use agreement. If they're stopped and they're, south of that area, well, we know he's going back, say, to Highway 587 or 27, whatever that may be on the 251, going, well, no, you're outside of the exemption. So I think we'll work on a policy for road use agreements, internally along with externally. Externally, we have, it through road data services, and that's developed through us there over the number of years. We can take some of that and piecemeal it into an agricultural use, so we can look at those exemptions. So,
through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Christie. The recommended motion that we've put out there is a little bit of a change from what you put forward, and it's picking up on what the question that you just asked Brad, is the wording of the motion leaves it open enough that we're not constrained, and Brad's alluded to this, that we're not constrained to any one approach. It does leave it open enough, and that's why things like the 90%, I'm recommending we don't necessarily put that in, because if we do that, then we're specifically exploring stuff around the 90%. This motion leaves it open for other options, and Brad's alluded to one that might be a very good one to explore. So this gives us a little bit of flexibility to explore some other things.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on to our vote or discussion points? Okay, so I will read the motion. Councillor Christie moved that Council direct administration to come back to a future council meeting and present options for agriculture exemptions for road bans. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, on to 10.0, committee reports. So we had our minutes of the cow meeting, committee of the whole minutes. Any comments or concerns come out of those minutes? Okay, great.
Deputy Reeve,
Yes, Councillor King.
I'd make the motion that council receive the council and committee reports as presented.
Have a motion to approve the reports as presented. All those in favor? Carried unanimous. Thank you. And we'll take a peek at the follow-up action items. Any questions or discussion from our action items? I have one. I was just interested to hear how our gravel sales at this point is looking. Is it looking like we will have enough for all the people requesting?
Through you, Madam Chair, at this point in time, we will. So we've had some interest in there. I don't know if I would define it as large-scale interest yet, although with that being said, administration also recognizes that it is a busy time of year with seeding and things like that, so we do expect afterwards that it will, we'll likely see more once the initial seeding is done. But we have had some interest to date.
Great. Anything else? Reeve Woodstock.
Well, if there's no more discussion, I'd like to move our council follow-up action list for information. To receive for information, sorry.
Thank you. One last request for any further discussion. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimous. So we're up to the end of our agenda, except for our closed session piece. We need someone to move us into closed session, please. Councillor King.
So moved.
Thank you.